Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Trolleheim with your host, Rabbi Anibal Mas. It's so good to see you all again. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Ariel. Welcome, Lori, Holly, Janet, Shelly, Brenda, and David is here too. Welcome, everyone. We are almost ready to begin with the class with Trolleheim. I'm wearing my almost sport t-shirt today. I have a very intense rehearsal with the youth choir this afternoon, so I have to be ready for a good workout with them. It's the second last practice before the Yom Ha'atzmaut performance is a big thing, and it's a wrestling t-shirt that I got in Mexico. I haven't worn it yet. Haven't worn it the first time. All the Mexican luchadores mask. It was so cool in how's it called? The place? How's it called? The place? It was in Cozumel. It was in Cozumel. It was cool. It was very cool. And yeah. Ariel, you like the Seder. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. The other family that it was with us, the Legov family, they have two kids that they are in Dor Hadash as well. So it was nice to have somebody who could sing with us. So it was a lot of fun. And I always do things, I bring my keyboard and there is a lot of music and stuff like that. Lori, you said you're counting pine trees for the Omer. Oh, wow. How do you do that? How do you count pine trees? That takes a lot of pine trees. I hope you have enough around you. David, is Lucha Libre? Yes, Lucha Libre. There is a place there. It's called El Barriecito. El Barriecito is called this place. And they put together matches for tourists. It's not like a professional arena or anything, but the level was very good. And they engaged people. It was so much fun to the point that at one point we were in the first row. One of the luchadores, one of the wrestlers, came to Ronen and took off his shoe, his croc, and started to beat the other guy with it. So it's a lot of fun. They know how to put a good show. That they surely know how to put a good show there. So if you ever go to Mexico, you have a chance to go to one of these places that they do matches of Lucha Libre, you should go. Don't even start considering, well, maybe it's too much for tourists, it's not the real thing, doesn't matter. Just go, you're going to have a great time. They really know what they're doing. The level is very, very, very good. Brenda, you said Michael and I studied Torah trope together and I had the same parsha. Oh, great. Yeah. Well, Brenda, next time you come to town, you have to read Torah for us then. You should plan it. Plan it in advance. I hope you're going to come visit us soon. Coffee, everyone? Cheers. Thank you, Brenda. Ronen is learning, and he gets so nervous when he comes, but he has to start. He has to get used to it. I'm trying to find ways for him to participate in the service. So what he's doing now is he's my drummer for the family service. So that is a way for him to get involved in the synagogue life. Otherwise, it's very tough. For kids to go to the main service is not really for them. So let's see how it goes. Because he got all inspired by the hand drums, so he's taking lessons now. So yeah. Lori, you say, I have a piece of paper. Let's see. What do you say? Piece of paper, 50 pine trees on it. My map and use it and count states. Oh, with states. That's a good one. That's probably a good one for kids to learn the 50 states of the United States when they count the Omer. Some teachers should do that. Canada is different. We don't have 50 anything, so except maybe we can count here 50 more days of winter. That's what it looks like. We are expecting a snow snowstorm maybe today. So it's like supposed to be spring. All the snow melted, but it's coming back. The snow doesn't want to go away. So, talking about the Omer, that's exactly what we are going to study today. We are going to review everything about the Omer and why it's one of my favorites time of the year. So I take it very seriously. I have an app that I use for the Omer. I'm going to show it to you guys. It's called Omer Counter. Omer Counter is like a, let's see if I can, let's see this. This. Oh, I have to do this. You see, there you can see that it says Omer Counter next to ChatGPT. Very good. And then when you open it, it looks like this. It gives you the blessing and the right day. Okay, so you don't have to be guessing what day it is to count the Omer. So it will send you a notification every time that it's time to count. So last night we counted 14 days. That was last night. And it tells me at the right time, at the earliest possible time to count the Omer. I get a bling for my from my phone to count. And then after I count, it will take me to a page that it will have a short reflection, Kabbalistic reflection from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, actually, most of them. Most of them are from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. It's like a very small, you don't even have to scroll. It's right there because, I taught this recently here. Maybe I should have taught the same thing here at Torah L'Chaim. I didn't think about it. Maybe I will do it next time. Maybe I will start next time with this and how the Kabbalah got blended with the counting of the Omer. Okay, so I'll do that. It was very interesting. I got a good review of that class. So, yeah, I think, Shelley, you were there, right, for the class that I taught the Omer from a Kabbalistic perspective. And, yeah. So, Lori said you use the app from the Neo Hasid. Okay, I don't have that. I know that there are some, I try some others. They're all good. The ones that I tried, but this is the most reliable for the notification. For me, that is more important than anything else because I know how to navigate the counting, but I rely on the notification so I won't forget. So, yeah, I won't forget. So, we are going to study a little bit about the counting of the Omer because we are preparing ourselves for Shavuot. And this is something that people sometimes forget, that we had Pesach, and Pesach is very important, but Pesach by itself is kind of useless. Pesach is absolutely connected to the next holiday, that is Shavuot. Okay? And that is something that is very important for us to remember. In the sense that Pesach represents freedom, right? But we know that in society, just giving people freedom and not having any law doesn't make any sense. It will be chaos. Everybody will do whatever they want to do. So that's why in Judaism we believe we need both. We need freedom, we need the law, and they are both equally important. So we celebrate Pesach in a big way, right? With the seders and the matzah. A lot of symbols there. But then we go into our preparation. Once we get our freedom, now we have the freedom from Pharaoh, who would allow us to prepare ourselves to receive the Torah, which is our own law, the one given to us as a gift from our Creator, from God. So it's a very big deal. And when is that happened? According to the rabbinic tradition, 50 days after Pesach. And because we are so excited to get the Torah after Pesach, we count the days in expectation. And this is something that is very human. When something is important to us, we count the days and we plan ahead, right? Think about us. I was telling this to the group when I was teaching here at Sherry Zedek, how, we count days how many days to a birthday, to a bar mitzvah, to a wedding, to a retirement, maybe. And so it's really, when you're excited about something, you count the days as a way of showing expectation, but also, and especially, if you have things to prepare in advance. Think about it this way. Let's say that you are planning a bar mitzvah or a big trip. Yeah, you count the days because you want to know when you have to leave, but also you count the days to know how much time you have to do what you have to do in advance. My wife and I, we're preparing my son's bar mitzvah, right? And we need to know how many more weeks we have until the bar mitzvah, so we know when to talk to the people who are going to be in charge of the decoration, with the photographer, videographer, DJ, catering, and all those things. You can't leave that to the last minute or it's going to be a flop. Doesn't matter how special the bar mitzvah moment is. Doesn't really matter how special it is if you didn't prepare everything in advance. Same happened with a trip. Let's say that you want to take a trip. Well, you can't leave everything to the last minute. You have to buy the tickets. You have to book the hotel. You have to be sure that the passports are okay. And if they are not, you have to start a process to renew the passport. But you know that it doesn't take a week, it takes more. So you need to know when to do what. So our rabbis teach us that the counting of the Omer is kind of the same thing in connection with Shavuot. It's an opportunity that we have, yes, to count an expectation because it's a big deal that is coming, but also to prepare ourselves, to do our homework, to be ready when Shavuot comes. And that's the beauty of the counting of the Omer, and that's why I take it so seriously, and I think that's why I think is so special. So let's go here, and we have to know that the counting of the Omer is not something invented by the rabbis, but is in the Torah. Okay? Leviticus 23, verses 9 to 11 says, listen to this. God spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come to the land that I am giving you, and you reap the harvest, you shall bring the Omer of the first of your harvest to the Kohen." Okay, first fruit is another thing that we do around that time is when we start getting the first crops. So, what happened? You bring this Omer to the Kohen. We are going to talk about the Omer in a minute. He shall wave the Omer before God to be an appeasement for you. On the day following the Shabbat, the Kohen shall wave it. A lot of things here, and it's a very confusing. It's a very confusing concept because there are some things that the text doesn't explain, and the rabbis have to figure out. So when I say this is something that we do because the Torah said so, not because the rabbis said so, yes, but we do it the way the rabbis understand it, and we are going to see how there was not one single opinion about how to do this, but there were at least two competing ideas on how and when to count the Omer. So listen to this. Number one, it said that you have to bring an Omer. What is an Omer? We don't really know. And when I say we don't really know, it's because we don't really know. Because I researched a little bit, and there were very different opinions on how much an Omer was. What we do know is that the Omer is a measure of volume. Okay? The leading theory is that the Omer is something that you will call in these days a handful. Right? Let's say that you have a barrel or a basket full of cereal, full of grain. You're going to use your hand and take as much as you can with your two hands, and it looks like that was an Omer. Okay? That's what you have to bring. Some others say that the Omer was the measurement of, or the volume of grain needed to prepare a meal for one. Is it about the same thing, about the handful? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So, so number one, the Omer, we do our best to understand how much that is. At the end of the day, it's not so important because this is something that it was connected to the temple. We don't have the temple anymore, so we don't really know if we don't really need to know how much the Omer was. Okay, that's number one thing. Second, you bring it to the Kohen. Okay, now the thing is when you bring it to the Kohen. Which day? The text says the day following the Shabbat. Which Shabbat? I give you a minute to answer that question. Which Shabbat? Any Shabbat? What do you think? What do you think? So, Shelly, no, it's not a pinch. This is supposed to be a handful, okay? Like two hands. Because I guess they figured that out when he said that the Kohen has to wave it. So it's, typical priest when they go like this, right? That kind of thing. So maybe it's coming from there. But when is that day following the Shabbat? Which Shabbat? Good question, Lori. I don't know about the manna. I don't know. I should research that. Very interesting question. But you see, the people could eat manna as much as they wanted to eat. The only condition was that whatever they didn't eat, they would rotten right away. But they could eat as much as they wanted, the manna. So, let's go back to this, the day following the Shabbat. If you go back to the Torah, to the book of Leviticus, the Torah is talking about the festival of Passover. Okay? So whatever we are talking about here, it has to be somehow connected to the festival of Passover. So, there was one group back in the day were the Sadducees, and eventually that became the Karaites Jews, which is a sect within Judaism. They rejected the oral law. They take this literally, and they say that we start the counting of the Omer, or in other words, we bring the Omer, the first Shabbat after the Passover offering. Because let me go back here. There is a confusion about what Passover is. Some people say that Passover is that whole week that we celebrate, the Pesach, 1 week of celebration. But back in the day, we have to be careful. Passover or Pesach was only one day, was the day of the offering of the Paschal Lamb. That was the Passover. That was the Chag HaPesach, the festival of the Pesach. Pesach has the lamb that it was sacrificed. It was one day. The rest of the week was Chag HaMatzot. Okay? Now in these days, because no temple, no sacrifice, we call Pesach the whole week, but it's technically Pesach is the first day, and then it's Chag HaMatzot, and that is that thing is pretty obvious when you read the Siddur or the Haggadah, that it never mentions, for example, for the Kiddush, never mentions Chag HaPesach, it mentions Chag HaMatzot. It Chag HaMatzot azeh esman cheruteinu mikra kodesh. It doesn't mention Chag HaPesach. So, long story short, Karaites, group of Jews, they rejected oral law. They say that we start counting the Omer the first Shabbat after the offering of the Pesach. Is that clear? Great. The rabbis, in other words, us, Rabbinic Judaism, us, we believe through oral law. What does it mean? We believe, because this was explained to Moses orally, that in this context, the word Shabbat in the Torah is not talking about the seventh day of the week. It's talking about Pesach in the sense that the day of the offering of the Paschal Lamb was also a day of rest. Right? So it says on the day following the Shabbat, it means the day following the offering of the Paschal lamb. Okay? So that's why we start counting the Omer following the rabbinic tradition, what we call in this day the second night of Pesach. We call it here in Israel will be already Chol HaMoed, which is technically the day after, or the day of the Torah says the day following the Shabbat, which is the day following Pesach. Okay, so that's the way we do it. We start counting the Omer right after Pesach, even though the Torah says Shabbat, but we have to understand that through oral law, we learned that Shabbat there in the context means Pesach and not the seventh day of the week. Okay? David Grossman, you say, let me see, wasn't the Omer barley because it was the first grain crop? Yes, that's correct. And we are going to see that. That's the Omer that gets presented right after the Passover offering is barley. But then we are going to see that on Shavuot, 7 weeks later, we are offering wheat. So there is also a transition that is very interesting to explore as well. Hopefully we are going to touch that in a minute. Okay? So this is about the law for the Omer. Now, let me read this to clarify everything. The period of the Omer derives its name from a special sacrificial offering that was brought in the temple. It was this grain offering, right? Before any newly grow grains, wheat, barley, oats, rye, and spelt may be eaten, the equivalent of 1 day worth of barley flour for one person, or, as I said, the other theory is 1 handful, must be offered in the temple on the second day of Pesach, what we call second day of Pesach. In Israel will be already first day of Chol HaMoed Pesach. This offering of barley flour is known as the Omer offering. Okay, we don't do it anymore. This is just, we remember that it used to be done, but we don't bring anything anywhere. Okay, there is no barley involved in any ritual in these days. Now, why do we do that? I want to bring you this explanation from Hizkuni. And he said, it will not be appropriate to eat from the new harvest without bringing a portion of it as a gift of thanks to God. So in other words, because this is the first reap of the harvest, now we have the explanation that we have to do right away as soon as the harvest of the barley started, right? We offer that to God as a way to thank God for the harvest that we are about to have. Okay? And it's very little, very symbolic, which is also very important, because you will say, well, we want a big harvest to feed our families and to sell it and to make money, right? So we should offer a lot to God. But the fact that the rabbis are asking us to offer just a little bit, and the Omer is actually not much, is also significant. And you'll see what I mean saying that. Listen to this. This is from Va'ikra Rabbah, from the Midrash. And it says, Rabbi Anibal said, the way of the world is that when a person buys some meat from the market, he must expend much effort and hard work until he cooks it, right? Think about it. If you want to do something with this expensive meat that you bought, well, you have to get the money, go to the market, and then once you have the market, you have to come home and you have to season it, marinate it, and cook it, and a lot of things are involved in that until you are able to eat that meat, and you have to do it all. Okay, and listen what it says. The Midrash. Yet, while people are sleeping, God makes the wind blow and brings the cloud, which cause the plants to grow and nourish the fruits, and we only pay him the value of an omer. This is the meaning of the verse, you shall bring an omer of the first of your harvest to the Kohen. Do you understand what's going on here? It's like God is asking us so little for everything that we are about to eat. When you go to a store to buy something, you have to pay full price. You have to pay fair price. But what the rabbis are saying here is that the omer that we pay to enjoy the grain is not a fair price. It's ridiculously cheap for something that it will depend mostly not on you. Because yes, you still have to sometimes water the crops. Sometimes it depends on the reality of your land, but sometimes not even that. Once you sow it, that's it. Then you wait until the rain come and the wind, and then all you have to do is to show up at harvest time and to get all that. But in between, there is not much for you to do. Unlike when you want to do something in your kitchen that you have to take care of all the details. So for all that, to have a system, because that's the way nature works, to have a system where you have to do something at the beginning and at the end, but nothing in the middle, for that we give God thanks in the form of the Omer. And because we don't have the Omer anymore, we are still aware of it as number one. When we count the Omer, because remember the Omer was offered only one day. Then that is the beginning of the counting, but we still reflect on this special beginning of the counting because it's important for us to remember to be grateful for everything that nature gives us without us doing much. Even the farmers, yes, they work hard at the beginning and at the end, but in the middle, other than, applying pesticides, there is not much else that they can do or they have to do. Okay, so this is why the Omer is so important, and this is why it's also important that the price we pay is not fair, is ridiculously steep, and we are grateful to God for that. Okay. Now, let's go into another thing now, because as I mentioned before, the Omer is the beginning. Okay, and yes, we call it the counting of the Omer, but after the presentation of the Omer the first day, there is nothing else connected to the Omer itself, except for the name, counting of the Omer, which I guess the technical name should be the counting started at the time of presenting the Omer. Make it easier with the counting of the Omer. But why do we need to count? We already analyzed a few ideas of the expectations and how special it is and the preparation. Okay? But I want to show you how the rabbis present this concept of counting and why it's so important for us to take it seriously and to find a way for us to count. Okay? Why counting? I'm reading now. The simple explanation is that the essence of the Jewish people is the Torah. And because of the Torah, the heaven, earth, and Israel were created. As the verse states, if not for my covenant of Torah, day and night I will not have appointed the laws of heaven on earth. So here Jeremiah is already saying that, the entire world was created for the sake of Torah. Why? To make us understand how much of a big deal the Torah is. Right? So, why counting? Because what is on the other side of the counting? Torah. And if we are saying here that the entire universe was created for the sake of Torah, then you realize how important Torah is and why the expectation, right? Why this is almost like, well, it is like, or it should be like preparing a special occasion in your life. Let me continue. Torah is the foundation and the reason that we will redeem and left Egypt in order to receive the Torah at Sinai and to keep it. In fact, this is all what Moses was telling Pharaoh all the time. That the reason they wanted to leave Egypt was to go to the mountain. Why? because at the Mount Sinai, they received the Torah. So why did God take us out of Egypt? To take us to Sinai to give us the Torah. And then the next step will be to enter to the promised land. Let's continue. Since the acceptance of the Torah was the goal of our redemption and serves as the foundation of the Jewish people, and through it we achieve our greatness, we were commanded to count from the day after the first day of Pesach until the day that the Torah was given. This manifests our great desire for that awesome day, which our hearts yearn for, just as a servant yearns for shade. We count constantly. When will the day come that we yearn for, the day that we left slavery? Because counting toward a certain date shows a person that all his desire and longing is to reach that time. So in other words, every day we count, we should count with Shavuot, which is the anniversary of the giving of the Torah, in mind. I say, how many days left are until we received our Torah? Now, I continue. And this is all from Sefirat Haomer. I always like to repeat what Sefirat Haomer is. It's a collection of all the mitzvot, all the commandments. If you want to know all the 613 commandments, go and get one of these. Sefirat Haomer. You will have it all one after the other. So which number of mitzvah is counting of the Omer? Mitzvah number 306 out of 613. Let's continue. The reason that we count from the bringing of the Omer, so many days have passed in our counting, rather than counting how many days remain, shows our great desire to reach the time of Shavuot. Therefore, we do not want to mention at the beginning of our counting such a large number of days that remain until we reach the offering of the 2 loaves on Atzeret, Shavuot. By the way, Atzeret is one of the names the Torah calls Shavuot, and the 2 loaves there is what I mentioned before. On Pesach, we offer barley on the pure form, right, in the raw form. But on Shavuot, we offer 2 loaves of bread made out of wheat, and it has to be something fancy. Okay, so we go from raw grain to fine bread. Can you see there that is also a development and a transition from one to the other, and one is superior to the other? Okay? It's very interesting. And we are going to see many things like that. On Pesach, we eat matzah. On Pesach, we eliminate the chametz. On Shavuot, we have to eat chametz. But I said, hold on a minute. Chametz, we just learned in Pesach, means ego. That's why we clean up our homes from chametz, to clean up our lives from ego. And now we are bringing it back on Shavuot, and that's why we have to present 2 loaves of bread. Why? Well, because on Pesach, we are just free. And when without any law yet, that's the moment that we have to stay humble. Once we have these 50 days in between Pesach and Shavuot to reflect on how to become better people, then we can bring back the chametz to our life in a control form. Now we are ready. Now we have the Torah. Now we prepare ourselves, which is very interesting. Shavuot is the one that brings balance to the force. Let's put it that way for all of you Star Wars aficionados. That's what we do on Shavuot. We bring balance to the two. In Pesach is the extreme. Shavuot is the one that brings the balance. Let's continue. So, we should not find it difficult to understand that once we have passed halfway through the 7 weeks, we do not count down the few days remaining, as one should not change the nature of the counting in the middle. So this is just an explanation. I guess somebody asked, okay, so why do we do a count up instead of a count down, right? And one of the explanation is to have a countdown. If you start from the beginning saying that we are 50 days away from the giving of the Torah, it's too depressing. Instead, we do baby step of 1, 2, 3, without really thinking on how many days we are away from our goal. All right. That is the explanation bringing here by Sefirat Haomer. Let's continue. Why do we begin counting from the day after Pesach and not from the first day? The answer is that the first day is entirely dedicated to remembering the great miracle of the Exodus from Egypt, which is a sign and evidence of the fact that God created the world and of the existence of divine providence. We may not mix something else into that happiness and mention a different idea with it. As such, the counting begins from the second day, a day where we start fresh and we have no other worries to think about. That part makes absolute sense. Okay? Any questions, please let me know in the chat. Let's continue. So, the Rambam, the Maimonides, will say here, Shavuot is the time of the giving of the Torah. In order to honor and elevate this day, we count the days from the previous festival until it arrives. Like someone who is awaiting for a loved one to arrive, who counts the day by the hours. This is the reason for counting the Omer from the day that we left Egypt until the day of the giving of the Torah, as this was the ultimate purpose of leaving Egypt. Why? Because Exodus says, and I will bring them to me. To me, in the sense, Mount Sinai. Now, let's bring the question again. Why a count up and not a count down? Why we say day 1, day 2, day 3, and not day 50, day 49, day 48, so forth. Listen to this. I think this is great. When a person counts the day towards a centered day, the intervening days have no significance. For instance, a person who is expecting to receive a large gift at the end of 50 days view the days of waiting as 50 days that they are interfering with my receipt of the gift. And when a day passes, only 49 days remain that separates him from the gift. But we relate to the days of Sefirat Haomer, the counting of the Omer, differently. These days are days of spiritual building, and when a person builds a 10-story building, he counts each story. I had built 1 story, a 2nd story, etc. He doesn't say, I have 9 stories left to build. Similarly, on the days of Sefirat Haomer, the counting of the Omer, we are building and preparing ourselves for Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah. God will be prepared to give us the Torah right away. But we are simply not ready yet. Therefore, we count the days of preparation and count the spiritual stories that prepare us for Matan Torah. In other words, why is a count up? Because we are building up ourselves. Think it that way. A countdown will imply, according to Rabbi Pincus, the countdown will imply a descent in a level. Right? It's like saying, oh, I'm at level 50 today. But tomorrow, oh, I'm at level 49, 48, 47. So you go from a high level to a low level. When you count up, you start from the lowest level, which was Pesach. Pesach, yes, gave us freedom. But from there, using that freedom, we have to use it well to build ourselves up. And that's what the counting of the Omer come to teach us. That is not an inconvenience between Pesach and Shavuot, but it's an opportunity each day of the Omer to keep elevating ourselves. Elevating ourselves how? Well, spiritually, intellectually, in Torah knowledge. So whenever we receive the Torah, we are a better vessel to contain the holy words of Torah. And that's the idea of the counting up and not counting down. Okay? Any comments? Let me know. Now, listen to this. The Omer on Pesach was from the barley harvest. The offering of Shavuot was of wheat. Barley is mainly food for animals. Wheat is food for human beings. The Torah hints to us that physical independence by itself still leaves man, from the Torah perspective, on the animal level. The counting of the 49 days signifies a sevenfold refining process and marks our progress to full human status with our acceptance of the Torah at Sinai 7 weeks after the Exodus. So, I think this is brilliant because this rabbi said, okay, what is barley? Barley is mostly animal food. Yeah, of course, you can still make barley soup, which I despise. Now I understand more why. It's animal. It's animal food. Okay? Animal food. But then 50 days after, what do we present to the temple? 2 loaves of bread, which is human food. It's refined, right? Because you have it's a brilliant thing, bread, something that is not coming from nature. You have to make it. You have to get the wheat. You need to make flour. You have to make it with water and yeast, and then wait until it rises, and then you have to bake it, and then you have bread. So, in other words, what we have here is a process from our animal being, and in the other side, we have us as fully developed human beings. What about that? And that's the idea of the counting of the Omer. So, in other words, going back to this, neglecting the counting of the Omer as a tool to make us better technically leaves us at the, so to speak, animal level. In the sense, I'm not implying that we are animals. I'm implying in the sense that we are not doing anything to improve ourselves. That's one of the things that we do as human. We are aware of our flaws, right? But then, because we are human beings, and there is something that distinguishes us from the animals, we can do something about it, and we can improve our nature. Animals won't do that, at least not by themselves. Sometimes when you have an animal, you as a human, you understand this principle, you can train your animal to do things, but it depends on you. So, but now what it is saying is that we have to do that with ourselves. So that's the interesting thing here. Okay? Now, how do we count the Omer? Let's get detailed here. Okay, I have too many comments here. Let me see. David, you like barley. Brenda, we need barley for beer. Yeah. Beer. You put barley on chocomilk. Barley sandwich. Barley sandwich. Okay. You enjoy your beer. It is a positive mitzvah, says the Rambam, to count 7 complete weeks from the day of the bringing of the Omer, as the verse states. You shall count for yourself from the day following the Shabbat. We studied that, right? It's not the Shabbat, it's Pesach. It is a mitzvah to count the days with the weeks. So, listen to this. The mitzvah is to count the days with the weeks. As the verse states, count 50 days. So, one should count at the earliest time. Therefore, one should count at night from the night of the 16th of Nisan. So, to make it clear for ourselves, diaspora Jews, we start counting during the second Seder. That's my tradition in my house. I wrap up the second Seder with my guest, counting the Omer for the first night, and that is a reminder that the next nights we have to keep counting. Okay? So, in other words, let's go back there. We have to count both in days and weeks. If a person forgot to count at night, he might count during the day. Counting should be done while standing. But if one counted while sitting, you still fulfill your obligation. Each night before counting, one should say the blessing. What kind of blessing? The one that says, "Who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us regarding the counting of the Omer." If one counted without a blessing, he has still fulfilled his obligation and should not go back and make the blessing. Okay, so that's why we have to be very careful never to mention which day it is of the Omer before we count. And that's why if you come to Shul, we never announce which day of the Omer we're about to count. We always talk in riddles. We always talk in riddles. We will say, for example, tonight we count bar mitzvah plus 1. So we are not saying that it's 14. Because if you say, tonight we count 14, you already said it, then you cannot go back to say the blessing. So that's why the most common way, the more traditional way to announce the Omer is to say which day was last night. So in this case, I'm saying, last night we counted 14. So everybody knows which number is tonight without me saying it. So that's the most common way of saying, okay, guys, we're about to count the Omer. Last night we counted 14. And everybody will go say the blessing and count the right date for tonight. Okay? So, yeah, that's the way. Now, the later authorities wrote that the counting may be done in any language, provided that the person understands that language. If he does not understand it, then even if he counted in Hebrew, he has not fulfilled his obligation. Since he did not know what he was saying, it is not considered counting. And this makes sense once again, for what I explained, that we are talking about this transition from our animal being to our fully human beings. So we are talking about the use of our brains, our understanding, our awareness. So that's why we have to be aware of each day of the counting. That's why if you don't speak Hebrew, the tradition is once you say it in Hebrew, say it again in English, to be sure that you understood what you just said. And that's the right way to fulfill the blessing. Brenda, you said, how is it handled when the wrong day is accidentally counted? When that day you go back and count it again. But the best way to do it is to download the app, the way I said it, or you can go online and just search Omer counter in PDF, for example. And there are plenty of things that you can download and you mark next. That there are checks marks that you can mark there every day that you count. Yeah. Now, listen to this. This is where it starts getting interesting because it goes a little bit of what you, Brenda, just said. Okay, about mistakes and I forgot, and listen to this. If a person forgot and did not count at night, he might count during the day without reciting the blessing. So you only recite the blessing if you count at night. If he forgot to count of any of the days, whether the first day of any of the other days, he should continue counting on all subsequent days without reciting a blessing. Do you understand this? If you completely forgot one day, then you have to continue with the right counting, with the right number, but you are not reciting the blessing anymore. And the only way for you to recite the Omer with a blessing from that point on is to join a minyan where somebody else will say the blessing and you will say Amen. But you cannot do it privately anymore. If you were disciplined to count the Omer every night, okay, then you can say the blessing yourself at home every night when you count the Omer. But one day that you missed, you will break the chain and you cannot recite blessings to the end anymore. So I guess this is a warning for us to take it seriously and not neglect the counting of the Omer. Now, Shulchan Aruch says, however, if he is uncertain whether he skipped a day, he should count the rest of the days with a blessing. Okay? Benefit of the doubt. Benefit of the doubt. Now, the other thing is, where do we learn that? Maimonides said that we have to stand the Omer while standing. Well, he learns it from here. We have learned from our rabbis that there is a hint in the Torah that the Omer must be counted while standing. Because the Torah says, and this is in another source, it's not from the Leviticus, this is from Deuteronomy. It says, from the time the sickle is first put to the standing wheat, you should begin counting. This word standing teaches us that one should count while standing. And this is an interpretation of from the rabbis. Okay? So that's the interesting thing that we learn there about the counting of the Omer. And the other thing that we have to mention about the counting of the Omer is that it became a semi-mourning period, with the exception of Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. You may be familiar with that. And what is that? Why is that? It's related to the story of Rabbi Akiva, which we learn that it was a plague that decimated his students. Okay? And the tradition says that plague happened between Pesach and Shavuot, but that same tradition says that the student stopped dying on the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. Okay? So that's why it's a semi-mourning period, that we have, some people don't listen to music or don't shave, don't cut their hair, and then at Lag BaOmer, everything stopped, because that is when the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. So I want to show you something here. I want to read that. We are approaching the end. The importance of the story of Rabbi Akiva is that the rabbis say that they died because of something very interesting happened. They said Rabbi Akiva said to his new students, remember the old ones died, right? My sons, the first ones only died because they did not look generously toward one another. Pay attention that you do not act like them. What does it mean? Remember I mentioned before that counting of the Omer is a time for us to refine our morals, to become better people. Something that the students of Rabbi Akiva, the great Rabbi Akiva, and we are talking about the finest students, the greatest scholars of a generation. They were great scholars, but they failed in their morals. And so the story implies that they died because they didn't take that time to improve themselves. So now Rabbi Akiva is giving himself a second chance as a teacher, because I guess it was also his own failing as a teacher what happened there, that his students did not treat each other well, nicely. They were not nice to each other. So now he said to the second ones, he said, pay attention that you don't like them. So what do? We listen to the words of Rabbi Akiva. We have to imagine that Rabbi Akiva is talking to you. And Rabbi Akiva is saying, don't do it like my old student. You don't be like the old students of Rabbi Akiva, and use the time of the Omer to improve your morals, your ethics, so we could become a better vessel for the Torah that is going to be revealed, God willing, on Shavuot. And that's why the counting of the Omer is so important. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Brenda, what do you say there, Brenda? Are you leading Kabbalat Shabbat this week? Yes, I am. God willing, I'll be there with all of you guys. Okay. So please join me on Friday for Kabbalat Shabbat. I will be there leading the service. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Remember, this class is going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time. If you miss anything, you can recatch it. You can rewatch it again tonight at 8 Central Time. Okay. Um, Holly said there is a suggestion how they or we should improve our communication with each other. Well, it is a tradition during the counting of the Omer to study Kabbalistic meditations on ethics, or there is another tradition to study uh, Pirkei Avot. Pirkei Avot is part of the Mishnah that is the one specifically dedicated to ethics. So we have seven weeks of counting of the Omer. So what we do is we take, and Pirkei Avot has 6 chapters. So we study the 6 chapters for the first 6 weeks, and then the last week we do a review of things that stand out to you. And that's the way to do it. I did it for a while. The thing started Pirkei Avot. I have all these books here that I used to read it during the counting of the Omer. Now what I do is I switch to Kabbalistic meditations through my app, through my phone. So that's the way we do it. That's the suggestion that the rabbis give us to improve. Okay, and yes, Shelley, I'm gonna. I talked to my colleagues here at Shari Zedek. Hopefully we are going to start again. We are gonna go. I'm gonna bring again the Pirkei Avot class soon, so we can start a little bit of the Mishnah through Pirkei Avot. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Give us the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done so. And stay safe. Hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.